That.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So the first book is based on my life. It tells the story of a little girl growing up in New Orleans who has to evacuate from Hurricane Katrina, and she decides to become a civil engineer who saves the city from flooding. But Celeste doesn't stop there. After saving Katrina, or saving New Orleans, sorry, she moves to Dallas for Celeste Tunnels Underground. In this book, she does an underground tunnel that helps with traffic congestion. So through my books, I try to educate kids on a working definition of civil engineering and construction management and increase representation for minorities and women within the industry.
And we just love Courtney. Thank you, Courtney. She's definitely a friend of ours. And next we have Enigma. This is another friend. He hangs with us. Come on, Enigma. He's from Louisiana as well. You didn't bring any of your books, but that's okay. Just tell them about yourself and.
Well, probably ain't bringing any of my books. I have like 31, so I can't hold all 31 of them up here, but I'm in the corner back there. But yes, I was in New Orleans. We left the Saturday before Katrina hit, and it was a life-changing thing. Everything just kind of all the normalcy that people, we do our day-to-days and stuff like that, all that changed in such a short period of time. So most of my books are fiction, so I'm here to talk about it. But yeah, I have 31 books, can't hold them all up. If you want to check me out, I'm right there.
Yes. Thank you, Enigma. And then next we have Dr. Lisa. And we're new friends now. She came in and we bonded.
Yes, we family.
We family now. And so tell us, quickly introduce yourself and talk about your books.
And look, she represent, baby. How y'all doing? Yeah. That's what we say when we see each other and others. That's the way we greet each other. And yes, I'm represented because I am Nola Bra. I am New Orleans, born, raised, and returned to the city and well here in Texas. I've written two books, and those two books are an outgrowth of what I experienced, not necessarily in Katrina, because I was here in Texas when Katrina occurred. And that's a whole nother story. But these two books are about the healing and the awareness that needs to happen because Katrina did not just stop on August 29th. It continues. And one of the other things that these two books have reminded me and others is that this word generational wealth from Katrina, I learned and was reminded that a way to move to generational health was to acknowledge trauma, was to find some help for myself and for my family so that we could be well, and also writing about to leave something as a legacy for my children, my children's children, my grandchildren's children's children, so that the legacy of generational health will continue.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so this is our panel. And I'm just going to ask a few questions, and then of course, we're going to open it up for you all to ask your questions as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I feel like there's someone else in here that needs to be on the panel. I just want to make sure. Now, is there anyone else in the room that actually experienced Katrina?
Yes. No.
Like you were in Louisiana,
In New Orleans.
New Orleans when all that happened.
Yes.
Okay, come on. You probably need to be up here. And she's my friend too. She comes to the store. I feel you need to be up here. Now, she's not an author, but she has the experience. And I want you to kind of introduce yourself and just tell them where you were.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pamela Zanders. I'm original from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Oh. Okay. So you can hear it, can't you? All right, I'm going to get another cheer. But as I'm doing that, quickly, not quickly, just kind of just tell us on that day, April. Well, no, August. Set the tone for us. Like, what did y'all get a warning? Like that day when you woke up, what were you doing? I'm gonna start with Courtney. What was happening that day for you?
Yeah, and I'll try to be brief. I'm sure all of us has a lot to say. But so for me, I was 14 years old when Katrina hit. I was in my sophomore year of high school. We were 2 weeks into the school year. But in addition to attending high school as I've been Franklin, Just shout out real quick. Number one school in Louisiana. Just saying. Uh, yeah. So I was at Ben Franklin, but I also attended a school called NOCA. NOCA stood for New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. You guys know.
Yes. What ward were you in?
So my house was in New Orleans East. We were technically in the Upper Ninth Ward. Yeah, and I'll just show you. I have a map of the city in my book, just for context. So I was at school in NOCA. I used to go on Saturdays, and it was very odd because they just missed us half day that day, and I was like, something's going on. If you guys remember Popeye's chicken, they used to every hurricane season they would release a map and kind of like a brochure, and it had the Gulf of Mexico and then a little bit of the Atlantic Ocean for you to actually track the hurricanes. So I'm the nerd in the family. I have 4 degrees, so I would track the hurricanes for my family. Katrina caught me off guard. Katrina caught most of us off guard. And the reason being is that the forecast was saying that it wasn't going to hit New Orleans. It was headed towards Florida, and we were going to kind of dodge a bullet. And even then, when they said it was headed towards New Orleans, it was just like a category 3. So everybody kind of packed up for a 3-day weekend, and then you guys know the aftermath. So me and my family, we also grew up with horses and dogs in our backyard, even though we were in New Orleans. And we didn't have enough capacity for our horses and all of the animals and all of the people to get out. So we had to evacuate really, really early because we took the family and as many animals as we could. And then my dad actually went back into the city to get the rest of the animals. So just for context, this is a map of New Orleans. So our house was, it's called New Orleans East, but it was like right there. And this is Lake Pontchartrain right here. And so we were 3 houses down from the levee of Lake Pontchartrain. And this is what my house looked like. So this is what I grew up at most of my childhood in New Orleans. When we evacuated, we went to Baton Rouge. My aunt was already living in Baton Rouge. She had moved there a couple of years earlier. So there were like 20 of us, something like that, in a 3-bedroom house. And yeah, that's kind of my Katrina story. That's where we rode out the storm.
Okay, so y'all with the family.
Similar to that, that Saturday, I actually worked like early that morning that Saturday before everything was going on. And I initially wasn't going to leave, but my wife was sitting back there. She actually convinced me to leave because I was like, yeah, because see, people don't realize there was like a hurricane like either 2 or 3 weeks before that we left for, nothing happened. And so at that point, I was like, nothing's gonna happen here. I'm not gonna stress on it. And so, like she said, we packed for just a few days, and then we were going to North Louisiana up there by Fort Polk, Leesville. We had family out there. And it was really kind of crazy. This is a trip that normally takes about 4 hours, and it took us 11 hours to get there. And, it's one of those things when the storm actually happened, what we were doing on that day is just watching. And the storm had initially passed. A lot of people don't realize this came after with the surge hit and everything started to flood. So, from a 3-day thing into, change of life was just really, offsetting. It was just something that we weren't prepared for. I don't think anybody here was prepared for that. My apartment was out in New Orleans East. My grandparents' house was out there in the 8th Ward. My parents' house was in New Orleans East. I had some other family in New Orleans East. And when I tell you the water line was like up to the top of the house, so if we would have stayed, it would have been terrible. And it was just me, my wife, and my 2 kids. My kids were younger back then, so I could just imagine. So, she talked me into leaving and I left. And, the reason behind me not wanting to go. Now, I know in Texas, everything is far away, so everybody gets on the freeway. In New Orleans, I didn't do all that driving.
Right.
I lived in the East, going to the lower 9 was a drive for me. Going to the West Bank was a drive for me. So I didn't want to do all that. I wasn't used to driving like that. And so we just left, like I said, a couple weeks prior to a hurricane and nothing happened. And it's just sitting in the car, coming back, the traffic back and all that type of stuff, and then, we all have jobs we got to come back to. They say you got to report this day. And so it's just a hassle, but I didn't really want to go, but thank God she got me out there. It was just a whole life-changing experience. And that was pretty much it. And I'll just say this, I am from Kennedy, 96. So that's #1 school, not in Franklin. But in New Orleans, everybody talk about your school. What school you graduated from? So out there to my 96 Kennedy Cougars, we here. But yeah, and it's one of those things that I wouldn't want anybody to ever experience because not knowing what's going to happen, and then we weren't able to get back into the city until like October. And then the first thing you smelled when you came in was the mildew, was the it was just terrible. So I wouldn't wish this on anybody else, but yes, it was one of those situations that I wasn't prepared for, and I know pretty much everybody went through it wasn't prepared for it either.
So my Katrina story is very different, but before I get to the story, I am a product of the McDonald number 35. McDonald 35 in New, come on, baby, let's hear it for the Ron Eagles. The best school, the best. Yes, we do. McDonald number 35.
And the color best.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, okay, we'll let you handle it.
Okay.
What's really important about that, for those of you who are looking in the connection to Katrina, you have heard stories and you've seen on the radio and on the television, you heard on the radio, podcast and all that. Well, the people didn't want to leave. Well, why didn't they leave? Some people didn't leave for various reasons, but one of the reasons that people didn't leave is because we are so connected. We are so connected. Not that others aren't, but everybody is family. See, Celestine sitting out there with the green shirt on, that's family. Now, we're not related biologically, but we are related because we went to the same best high school in the world. Right? And knowing that if we left, we might not be able to come back, or the people who we left might not be with us. That's one thing. My story is different because the year before Katrina happened, the best husband in the world, he's sitting right there with the Lola Brush shirt on, right there. We got married and we left New Orleans along with my firstborn daughter, who's at my table back there, her husband, and my two oldest grandchildren. We left, and because we left, when Katrina occurred, we had places for them to come. And that was very significant. When Katrina occurred, no, I wasn't there, but my spirit was there.
Jesus.
Okay? I saw it, I felt it, I cried. My husband sent me out the room while we were watching out in Kaufman, Texas, watching what was happening. And when we saw on Claiborne and St. Bernard Avenue, the circle, which was like our New Orleans Walmart, and we saw that the water was at the top of the roof. He had to send me out the room because I couldn't take it. And that's one of the things that we have to remember when we talk about trauma. I experienced secondary trauma because I wasn't there. But like I said, my spirit was, my people were there, right? When I saw that, I also knew that my house, which was some blocks away in what we call the 7th Ward, I knew that the house that I grew up in, it wasn't going to be able to stand. It could not withstand the water that was going to come from the lake, Lake Pontchartrain, the bayou, the rain, the drainage that didn't, the drain that didn't drain, all of that. And it didn't. When I went back in March, 6 months later, my daughter, who is my firstborn, and I say that with some significance, because she had to literally walk me through my childhood house to keep me together. Because seeing the mud, smelling, not being able to open the door, it was painful, very painful. But thankfully, God had already ordained. And I say Mother God because of the femininity that I feel when I say that.
Say it.
Mother God prepared us and prepared the hearts of many of you
to receive us before we came, so that when we got here, there were places, there were people's hearts, there was the caterer, there was the cook, there was the bookshop, there were those schools that even though they accepted us and we are thankful, there were also those who were like, "Who they talk funny? Why they say that? Why they answer themselves or they selves like we see? Why they say, girl, I'm not playing with you, no." Right? That's what we see. And part of what the story doesn't say about Hurricane Katrina is part of the reason we say that is because of our family. It's also because we are, most of us there, we are what we call Creole, not just because of our skin color, our complexion, but we Creole because we are African, because we are French, because we are Spanish, because we are Caribbean, all of those things, right? So leaving from our place under duress for some made some of us afraid. And that was part of the reason why they couldn't go. The other reason why they couldn't go is because they did not have the resources. Because quiet as it's kept, and y'all saw it on the TV, New Orleans, and I'm the only one could say this about my city because that's my city. Okay. We are really a plantocracy. Okay. For those of you, this plantation mentality. We could say that because that's what it's, don't y'all fix your minds to say that. I'm just telling you. And so family, connections, the schools, the smells of the food, the way we talk, the way when we hear the drum, our feet get to moving. The way when we hear a trumpet, oh, we get to second line there. And we can't teach our children how to do that. See that little girl back there with the little black shirt on? That's my youngest grandbaby. She doesn't know about New Orleans like my daughter does, but it's in her. The ancestors have put it in her. She dances like our people from New Orleans. And so it was those kinds of things that made us sometimes afraid. But it is also the reminder that what's in us and what the ancestors have for us, we will receive it even as we are moving towards healing.
Well said, well said. I just want to take a moment for myself because y'all say so much. And I'm still believing God to heal me in that area. I'm sorry if I'm crying.
It's all right, no sorrow.
Just to experience that, they left us there to die. I'm just going to be honest with you. They ordered body bags, we never received the body bags. They ordered buses, the buses never arrived. We was in a room talking, and the water was steady rising. And I went outside, and I seen the water coming around the curve like a car. And I told our family, I said, we got to get up out of here. We stayed another night. It was so hot. I mean, it was so extremely hot that nose started beating inside the home because we didn't have the air conditioning. My niece and I laid on the floor the night before. She said, she turned over, she said, Auntie, if we don't get out here, we're going to die. I told my husband, I said, husband, y'all have to do something. Because if we don't get out here, we're going to die. I knew she meant what she said because prior to that, the boy hit the bridge and people had died. So I know she was a prophet. So I had to tell my husband, whatever y'all got to do, go get us a boat because the water is rising to the second floor. We're on the third floor. They finally found us a boat. I said, God had a boat on reserve.
Come on.
I thank God for that.
Come on. That's right. On reserve. Let him go. He won't come.
And my neighbor, I said, you coming, boo? She said, no, Pam. She said, I'm waiting. She said, y'all go ahead. We're going to meet again. I said, girl, come on. I said, because this is nothing to play with. I said, come on, so we can survive together. My husband finally got the boat, to make a long story short. He got the boat. And we started getting in the boat. But as we were riding on the boat, they had people still on the third floor on the left-hand side in the St. Bernard project. And they was guiding and directing us and said, don't go that way, because if you go that way, it's going to be a car. You're going to ride on top of a car. A boat fell over and the baby went in the water. So the guy had to jump out of his boat and go get him. And my son, he was a swimmer, so he saved so many people. And then his foot, he cut his foot. And when he cut his foot, it was so wide open. I said, son, I said, you can't swim no more to go save nobody else. I said, because you're going to hemorrhage, you're going to bleed to death. We got on the bridge. We made it to the bridge where everybody was at. They had helicopters, military helicopters coming on in. And when they came on in, they started throwing the water and the food down from the helicopters. They had helicopters coming, but they would tell you, get in line. But they had looked like they had selected people who they wanted to get on the helicopter. That was the crazy part to me. I'm experiencing this, but I had to stay my focus because I had my children with me and I had my husband with me, so I had to stay abroad. I had to keep my mind focused because I knew they was all over the place. Because guess what? I can't answer my child, we're going to die. I can't explain that to my child that if we would have stayed here any more longer, we would have died. I have children with no answers. So all I had to do was just say, Lord, your will, your way. They brought us on causeway. They finally put us in a helicopter. You see all these people ill, disabled, just in wheelchairs, no food. We didn't have anything. They got us on causeway. Buses finally start rolling. They're rolling. They tell you get in line or start from the back. They're gonna pick you up right here. Next thing you know, I told my family, I said, you know what? Something ain't right. Because how all them people on the bus and we in front of the line? So they was picking the people from now and then. I said, you know what? We're going to have to use wisdom. I said, guess what? We're going to have to separate. Because I had a grandbaby. I don't know. I think it was her. I think she was the baby for Katrina, if I'm not mistaken. I told my daughter, I said, you know what? Y'all take them babies and y'all go get on the bus. I said, if it's meant for us to be together, we're going to be together. I said, but we got to use wisdom. We got to get up out of here. So we did. We got on the bus. We separated. We finally separated. We wound up in Houston. Oh, my God. Lord have mercy. Houston was a mess. I'm going to put it like that. Because what I saw, it hurt in my heart. Because we were supposed to have a mindset, but I had to remember, Pam, you with everybody. And when I mean everybody, I mean everybody, all different walks of life. That's who he was with. So when we went into the Astrodome, we sit there for a few days or whatever, and my pastor, prior to that, I sowed a seed. And my pastor came in the Astrodome, and he said, he had a sign. He said, Pastor Terry Reed. I told my family, I said, oh, come on. I said, let's go. Let's go. Let's get up out of here. They didn't go. We wound up going. We wound up in Weatherford. And we was on a campground, and some kind of way they say husband and wives couldn't be together. Okay, we was married. Me and mother was married for 15 years. How we get separated? I told my husband, something ain't right about this. How you sleep in this house and we gotta sleep in that house? I say something ain't right about it. I said, guess what? We gotta get up out of here. God fixed the way where he opened the door. We got our own house. You know, God to make a way out of no way. So we traveled all the way back. My daughter found out. My son got in a little trouble back there because he didn't want to listen. Because after a while, you don't know who your children was. So I didn't know who he was. I said, Lord, well, I got to get him some help because something ain't right. Because I said, I know one thing. He had the experience that saving all these people, cutting feet, and all this type of stuff, losing all his classmates. We needed closure. My kids were going to school in Rutherford, and Hurricane Fat Tuesday was our thing. So we were second line on Fat Tuesdays and all this. And I went to the principal. I said, Principal, I said, I won't go to Katrina this time. I said, Fat Tuesday, only this time to give my children a closure. He said, I'm going to grant you that. They granted us that to go to New Orleans and celebrate Mardi Gras and this stuff. So we came on back. I told him, I said, you know what? We got to get our life back on track because that happened. And ain't nothing we can do about it. But we got to move forward. We moved from Weatherford to Arlington because, like I said, my son got in some trouble, so that led us without a home. But God opened the door for us to stay by somebody else's house. See, you got to go through all this to get where I'm now because you know I'm a homeowner
Come
now, and
on
I
now.
thank God for it
Come on.
because God will make a way out of nowhere. I'm sorry for being
Right.
spiritual with y'all, but
Alright.
guess what? God will make a way out of nowhere. And I'm a homeowner, and I thank God that He said He never seen the righteous forsaken, nor His seed begging for bread. And I sowed that seed. Didn't know why I was sowing that seed, but the man of God helped us. They divided our husband, our family. That's okay. Because guess what? We united today.
Come on.
And I thank God for it. He don't make no mistakes. And I thank God who all had to go through Katrina. Everybody got their own story.
Yes.
I half of the stuff I did not remember. My kids sit me down and they said, Mama, we went through this, and that. I said, why I don't remember? God ain't want me to remember because it was that mental. People was dying. And then they lied on the news and said that after Katrina, they put numbers on these houses, say that, oh, they didn't have nobody died in these houses and they marked X's with zeros on it. And come to find out they had people decomposed in these houses. So they lied. So they had to come back on national TV and say they lied. You know what? But I thank God I'm here to tell the story today. And I appreciate your ears. I'm done.
I'm glad you went up there.
That's, wow. If I can, I have no words. But I'm gonna ask Courtney, only because, um, we're, normally I check my channels before I get started. And I didn't check my channels. And Courtney, you are not on the line. So I just need you to give us a quick summary. So I just want to get you recorded. So I can pass it back down to Courtney. Sure. What was that day during your experience? I'm sorry. I should have checked my channel.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Courtney Kelly, children's book author.
Oh, wait a minute. Tell TCU thank you for me.
Oh, TCU, thank you. Tony up. Little sibling rivalry there. Yeah, so I'm a children's book author. My books are about Katrina, the first one. So when Katrina hit, I was a sophomore in high school. We were in our second week of my sophomore year, and that Saturday I was at NOCA, New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. I was studying violin, classical instrumental, interclassical instrumental program. And it was odd because class was supposed to end at like 2 or 3, but it let us go home early. We like cut off half day. So we went home, packed whatever we could. At the time, we thought we were just going for a 3-day weekend, and you know the aftermath. But my family had to evacuate twice, take 2 trips in and out of the city. So we left as early as we could with my family and as many animals as we could, and then my dad went back into the city to get the rest of the animals. We evacuated to Baton Rouge, where my aunt had moved a couple of years before Katrina, and there were somewhere between 15, 20 of us in a house at the time. And so we were out the storm there, and then later kind of reestablished life in Baton Rouge.
As I listened to my sister talk about her son, and she said he got into a little trouble. She also reminded us of all the good that he had done. And I want us to remember that when we talk about Katrina and so much other ways that our young people, in particular our Black men, are seen. When you have been traumatized, and there are some who say, y'all could just gonna wear that out. Trauma is real. Unacknowledged trauma is real. Untreated trauma is real. And what we see is what we get when we forget and we decide to dismiss. And so, what's your son's name? So Charles was like and is like so many, and I'm just going to leave it at New Orleans. When you look at New Orleans, you hear and see mostly about crime. You hear and see about crime, and you also see about how we like to have a lot of good time. What you also are not seeing and not hearing is that not all of our children Not all of our adults are bad. And, again, y'all like to talk about how we sound. If we are not going to acknowledge and provide resources, and I don't mean just come by one day a week, I mean real consistent ways for our people, children, and see some of the adults, this young man right here, he's 23 years old now, he's an adult. Katrina, right? I don't know your name, but that's an adult, that's a woman. Some of the teachers and some of the adults who are leading in our city in New Orleans and around the country are dealing with unacknowledged trauma. And so if you don't take care of that, then you get a lot of unhealthiness and you get some behaviors that are displayed and we say, oh, that's terrible. But we don't think about those two things. They're not all bad. That trauma has not been taken care of. And I'm gonna put a plug in right quick if I can. So as I told you, my story is a little different because I wasn't there, but I was. And we can't stay there. We have to never forget. We have to look back to live forward. And one of the ways that I am doing that, and I want to continue to invite opportunities to do that, is on what I call Dr. Lisa's front porch, where women, and because we women, we lead our families, we lead the communities, we give birth to the babies, we nurture the little grandbabies, we teach and we support our men, all of those things. We need a space, non-judgmental, where we can laugh, we can shed some tears, we can giggle, we can deal with some of what I like to call the bitternesses and the sweetnesses of life in a safe space. And so we do that on Dr. Lisa's front porch. Well, where is that? It's everywhere. And we'll talk more about that. But as we continue to look back, we need to make sure that we look back to live forward.
Thank you for that. And I was about to go into that direction. I wanted to know what are some of the things you're doing now to deal with those memories and trauma. Like what are you doing? And also kind of talk about some of the challenges that you still see going on from Katrina. And we're going to start with Courtney and work it down.
Yeah, so for me, I think the most clear example is the creation of Celeste Saves the City, my children's book. As I mentioned, I was in high school when Katrina hit. I ended up going to two other high schools in Baton Rouge and later graduated and also attended a community college my sophomore year of high school. During Katrina, a lot of people say we're ill prepared, and it didn't make sense to me. Ever since I was little, I was at Gentilly Terrace Elementary, right? So they used to tell us about how during Hurricane Betsy, the water was up to the second floor. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, if it was up to the second floor of Betsy, Katrina is now a category 4 when it landed. Why were we so ill prepared? I told my dad, why isn't there like a hurricane hotel that already has beds, already has the food, already has a generator, is able to withstand the water, the wind, all of it? Like, it didn't make sense to me. We were having to call our friends and try to convince them to leave the city. And the city had no plan, really. It was like, oh, we'll use the Superdome. Like, y'all didn't think about this? So the summers after that, my parents were probably tired of me asking them questions. They put me in STEM camps. Through those camps, I focused on civil engineering, thinking that if I studied civil engineering, I could one day go back and help New Orleans. So I studied civil engineering and math at SMU. I got my master's degree in civil engineering with a concentration in structures from SMU and started working in construction. And as I was doing it, I realized a lot of kids didn't look like me. The people that I was working with didn't look like me in my classes or in my workplace. And that led me to release Celeste Save the City to try to change that dynamic, but also to tell my story. Because I felt like I had a story that was unique, how this experience of Katrina led me into civil engineering. And I wanted to make sure the kids knew what civil engineering was, because if civil engineers, and I can say this now, if civil engineers had done their job right, back in the day, right? If the city leadership had done their job right, if all of the powers that be, the politicians, the civic workers, all of those things, if they were in place, then you would have had Katrina. the aftermath of Katrina. And the National Geographic documentary that was referenced earlier, Race Against Time, if you watch it, you'll see that. It takes you through the entire kind of story of Katrina, before and after. And how am I dealing with it now? Katrina taught me a lot. It taught me about change, that change is inevitable. How you deal with it is up to you. Resilience, I was interviewed for a magazine yesterday, and someone said, well, what are some of the things you had to go through? I'm like, well, I went to go get a library card. And a librarian said, we're not handing out library cards to refugees. And I'm like, I'm in Baton Rouge. I'm 80 miles away from home. I hadn't even crossed the state line. And we're at a library, and you don't even know the definition of a refugee.
Right, right, right.
So that experience, you talk about how people treat us when we say talk a certain way. You guys talk too fast. I was in Baton Rouge. Down the street, yeah. And it was like a culture shock, like nobody's business, with my people. It was a predominantly Black school. But I think that because of that, because of how I was treated, because of how my family was treated, how we tried to rely on the government for certain things, and I realized that was basically a wasted effort to a certain extent. I've tried to live my life with a whole lot of intention and grace and empathy for people that are going through similar situations, for people that don't look like the people in the room, who walk into the room and you can tell by the look in their eyes, like they feel like they don't belong there, right? So I try to bring all of those people in and kind of wrap my arms around them and be the voice for those that can't feel like they can't speak for themselves. So I'll just say a little bit about the book. Since its release in 2022, I sold over 5,000 copies between that book and my second book. It's available in 4 languages, English, German, French, and Spanish, and it's sold in over 15 countries. So I just came back from Singapore. One of you guys called me when I was in Singapore. It was like, when I was in Singapore, I did 3 book events there. I've done book events in Germany. So I say all that to say, through my books, kids are learning about Katrina. Because otherwise, who's going to teach you about it, right? They're learning that this happened in New Orleans, and this little girl saw a problem, and she lived her life with intention to get to a solution that can help not only her, but help the people around her. So I hope that you didn't ask this, but in terms of my legacy, right? I hope that as kids are reading the book, regardless of whether they go into engineering or not, right? Maybe they're a lawyer one day, maybe they're a doctor. They can think about Katrina in a different way and think about their profession in a different way because of reading Celeste Saves the City.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So really talking about, the aftermath and things like that. One of the things that I went through, just in life in general, my dad was in the military. And so we moved around a lot. All right. And so starting over isn't, it wasn't foreign to me. Now my wife, my kids, that's foreign to them. They weren't used to moving around, traveling and stuff like that. So really, when all of this happened, pretty much I was just basically focusing on making sure we get taken care of, things like that, because I know, a lot of people if you've been to New Orleans, people who've been there for years, their whole life. I left, went to school with some kids, left, came back a few years later, and kids are still there. They didn't really understand the different things. I came from Colorado first and went back to New Orleans up to Gregory, so middle school. Gregory Middle School, there we go. So I came back to Gregory and, just talking to some of the kids, they're like, you from Colorado, did y'all ride on horses and stuff? I'm like, no, we drove in cars and stuff like that. This was way before the internet and all that. And so, when people look at us and look at us differently, I understood that. And then there was all this pushback after we left. I tell, this story all the time. We came out here, so we went to North Louisiana. We had family out there. And eventually trying to figure out if we're going to stay out there, or we going to go back to New Orleans, or we going to try to go to Dallas. My mom and them moved over to Dallas. So we had my auntie and them were already out here too. So we went to Dallas. All right. Looking for an apartment. Okay. First, we looked at 2 different apartments. Okay. And we narrowed it down to 2 different apartments. One of them was a little more raggedy than the other, but it was cheaper. I didn't know cost of living out here or whatever. So I said, we'll just get this apartment here. And then, future, we'll just, upgrade or whatever once we get settled. So we went back to this apartment, talked to a lady the day before or a couple days before or whatever, talked to her, and she was like, yeah, this is all you need to do, blah, blah, blah. Came back a few days later, said, yeah, we want to stay here. So a lady found out we from New Orleans. Now she want 3 months of rent up front, all kind of stuff, and just, yeah, you're gonna have to pay more because they think everybody got FEMA money, was getting like 40 and 50,000. Everybody kept talking, oh, people, FEMA money, people getting 40. We didn't get no 40, 50,000. Okay, we didn't get all that. And so just like that, New Orleans had this little vibe that everybody talked about, even like right after, like you said, refugees and all that type of stuff. When you told somebody you was from New Orleans, they backed up from because like the stories they hear and everybody this and everybody that. I'm like, no, I am not like that. My parents are not like that. My wife's kids are not like that. But this is they're looking at the news. You say New Orleans, everybody backed up a few steps because they thought New Orleans was the worst place in the world. Okay, so just kind of really how to deal with it. Like I said, it's nothing that you ever really get over.
That's right.
Because even when you watch stuff today, watch the Saints games and all this in the Superdome, you all remember that type of stuff. They don't let you forget either.
That's right.
Every Saints game, they got to talk about Katrina at least in one segment. Yep. So they don't let you forget about all this stuff. But I mean, really just, I didn't really have time to really kind of dive into it in the aftermath because I'm worried about getting everybody else together. You got to be the one that just makes the plans, kind of focus. Okay, this is what we need to do. And we were staying in my auntie house. There was like a whole bunch of us, like I said, a 3-bedroom. I don't even remember how many of it was, and then we moved out eventually. But I will say there were a lot of good people that we came into that helped us. When they found out we from New Orleans, I remember when we moved into this apartment, one of the neighbors said, hey, we got this couch. Y'all want this couch? Yeah, sure. We're trying to build up. There was a lot of people who actually were doing a lot of things for us. My wife's job, she was working at Walmart at the time. And she went to that local Walmart there. They were like, oh, yeah, we taking all New Orleans folks. Y'all, they gave her money up front. Just gave her money. You didn't have to stay. And then they say, look, we can get you a job here, working here, blah, blah, blah. And so there was a lot of things that were helpful out there. I mean, the Red Cross, let's be honest, we wouldn't have had a Christmas if it wasn't for Red Cross that year. So we got a Red Cross, bought our kids some gifts and all that type of stuff. That was all off of that. So there was a lot of things that people did help out with. But I'm always taking it back to that apartment lady who just tried to basically,
Discriminate.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. As soon as you say New Orleans, oh, I need all this money. The lady before we talked to didn't say nothing about this. It was all good, but you hear New Orleans, all of a sudden you want more money and all that stuff. So, but how dealing with it really is just, a lot of therapy. I don't know. I've been to therapists before, not just with that, but just life in general. But it's part of that too. Just really trying to get your mind focused and just what came of it. I was telling my story and it wasn't even, nowhere close to this story. I was telling this story to somebody, just what I had went through, and she was, she was in tears. Just some lady, I forgot if it was at a store or something, and she was almost in tears listening to my story. And I'm like, I'm not feeling that way because I know people who had it a hell of a lot worse. I knew people that were evacuating that had nowhere to go. We were lucky. We had family up north that we could actually go and just kind of ride out the storm. There was a lot of people who were just getting in cars, just driving. They had no destination. All the hotels and everything were sold out. They had nowhere to go. So when I hear stories and people talk about, Katrina, I always say, I didn't have it that bad. There were a lot of people who had a lot of worse. We were getting contacted from people, friends and all that who were, like I said, right on the bridge, trying to make it there. They just asking for help. Like I said, and then you hear the stories, they're dropping food and water, and just like they said, they left us there to die. And it was all political, in my opinion, because we had a Democrat governor at the time and a Democrat mayor city. They didn't want it, and then we had George Bush, okay? It's like, I don't know who broke the connection. They both said it was all on them, but it didn't really matter. It's like people are dying out here. Do something. You had people like Sean Penn, Spicoli. He got to New Orleans. How can y'all not get to New Orleans? The Canadian Mounties, they got to New Orleans to help. How can nobody else in our U.S. government get there? We can't get there. It's all this, but you got all these other people, Geraldo.
They was flying over the city.
Yeah, they had all of this. So you had ways to get there, and then people, you see us, you can transport food and all that over to these other countries. But for us, you just drop it on there. You know what I'm saying? And we heard all those stories. We heard all the stuff. Now, how much was true? How much wasn't? You know, whatever. But really, you never really get over it. Let's just be honest. Those of us who were there, and you know, especially the folks who stayed there, they definitely, you know, that's going to be something they're going to deal with for the rest of their lives. All of us who were basically families were ripped apart, everything was changed, just life changed. You know, in New Orleans, everything is just one steady thing. You know, we all know each other, we family. You know, joke about the schools, talk about second line. People don't know what cold drinks are. We all know that type of stuff. You know, yeah, I was talking to my staff just recently. I was like, we the only people that'll say something like, yeah, we got cold drinks, but they need ice or something like that. Right. They don't understand that we got cold drinks, but they warm. Yeah. They don't understand what that means. And I'm like, yes, that's us, okay? But you know, just really, I don't really have an answer to what can be done about it, or you know, it was just one of those things that I couldn't move back because of that, because I felt they left us to die, and I didn't want to, you know, if it had just been me, myself, you know, maybe not a big deal, but you got family. I can't go through that and let my family sit there and go through all this. You know, I had to, you know, we had to relocate. We've been out here in Dallas since 2006. And we just, you know, we've loved the area. You know, a lot of people out here in Texas were welcoming, other than that apartment lady. But, you know, it's just one of those things, you know, it's just, I don't know, there's just really no answers to how to resolve this issue in the future. You know, hopefully you can get those, everything taken care of out there with the engineering, you know, but, you know, as far as the people who went through it, it's probably one of the most traumatic times in your life, you know. Oh, and I'll tell this story too here real quick. So my father, he worked for like the juvenile facility. And so he was working in the juvenile prisons and all that type of stuff. We didn't know where he was after the storm. We had no contact. You know, it was like days later when he finally called us, because they had to take care of all the children and all that. They were moving them in and out of facilities and stuff like that. So we didn't even know where he was. So just imagine having a loved one, you have no clue where they at, you know. So I'll leave it at that.
This on my heart. I want to clear something up pertaining to my son. It wasn't like he got into major trouble. You know, back in our days, we used to play what they call the N-word knock. You know what I'm saying? So, and I told him, I said, son, y'all can't be doing that in Texas. Y'all know where y'all at in a foreign country. You know what I'm saying? It was foreign to us. But how I'm dealing with it, I had to let go and let God, because it was so mental challenging to know that how you pay your taxes, you pay your bills, and you live there, and they didn't have nowhere to get out. We didn't have anywhere to get out, no resources, no nothing. And to hear that our president was eating brunch when we were, yeah, like, come on, Pam, you're going to have to heal yourself. And I hope and pray that my kids got healing from it too. You know, because after Katrina, I seen a lot of people acting up and their kids acting up, and a lot of people wanted to go back. And I said, why do y'all want to go back to somewhere where they left us to die? But to fast forward to me, I thank God, because I always a person that loved education. So I walked into the doc bookstore, and I said, "Oh my God, they got books everywhere in there." I said, "This is where I want to be at," you know. And I've been connected with them for a minute, and I thank God for them. You know, just to see their smile and see their welcome warmth when you come in here. You know, they so warm. Oh my God, I thank y'all. I thank y'all for making a difference in the community, even in. We don't have to go to the library. We can come here to the bookstore, as you know, to know that someone still cares for us. And I thank God that I'm continuing to heal it in that process. But it was a drastic change for me. It was a major, major, major change for me because I had to leave everything. Everything. When you come here, you came here naked, everything. So we had to rebuild. And to build with children, it was harder. You know, my husband, they had to leave his job to come to Texas with no job. But now I thank God, like I said, for the education. I came here, I rebuild, I'm in school. I got a chance to go to college. I'm the first person in my family to go to college.
All right, come on, baby.
So I don't take it lightly. So it was like my past. I got to relive my past.
Wow.
So I thank God for it.
Thank you.
I don't take it lightly. I don't want to get arrogant. I don't want to get puffed up because somebody's situation is always worse than yours, but you get to experience it. I got the experience and know that Katrina came, but it went.
Come on.
Bessie came, but it went, and we still here to tell the story. I'm sitting on this panel.
Right.
Tell y'all that no matter what kind of storms we go into life, in life, we still here.
Still here.
Amen.
If we stay focused,
That's right.
we can make it. Sometimes if we can stay in the squeeze, we'll get pulled out some kind of way.
All right.
So when you up, you go down and you pull somebody else
Come
up.
on now.
Because when I saw my son pulling them people and saving them people's lives and children's lives, that meant so much to me in spite of everything else.
Yes.
Because guess what? Put no trust in man, because man will fail you every time. And that's what I had to tell myself. And I tell my family, my grandchildren, get y'all some education.
Yes.
Because that's something that they did not want us to learn, was to read. And if you read, you got power. When you got power, you got knowledge.
Right.
And it'll take you so far in life. Because one thing I always noticed, and I learned myself, taught myself, black and white don't change.
All right.
Come on. Come on.
All right.
Come on. Black and white, don't you?
Ooh, this battle's emotional.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a gentleman that wants to come and share. I'm gonna let him share, then we're gonna close with Dr. Lisa, because you Dr. Lisa, she a prophet.
All right.
She can close it.
I love to hear her talk.
So were you there?
Tell them how you.
Tell your story. Tell us who you. Where were you that day? What was going on?
Tell them how.
My name is Joe Thomas. How y'all doing? I'm a student at Texas Wesleyan, working on my master's. At the time, I was 5 years old when that happened, but you made me remember, but didn't remember because I don't remember like what happened at that time. I just remember the National Guards coming to get me being gone from a month away from my mom in North Carolina. I don't even know who she was. I can't even tell you what happened. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't even know what happened.
Well, where are you in North Carolina?
I don't even know. Man, I can't even tell you.
You were how old?
About 5.
That's cool.
I don't even remember. But just hearing y'all stories, y'all made me remember a lot, you know. And it's like I feel y'all the struggle, the pain, you know. And that's why I do what I do. I started a company where I help out, you know, our people because I understand that we need each other, and that's all we had was each other. You know?
Sure. Well, why didn't your family leave?
But we didn't have the resources. Like,
Talk
you
about
know,
that.
we didn't have the resources. We didn't watch TV. So my family, we like the outside kids. Like my people always outside. We had every second line, every block party. You know, we just, you know, each other. Anything that got going on with us is with us. If it's dealing with anything else, we don't know what's going on. And my people, unfortunately, got caught up in that, and they won't leave. They didn't trust the. They didn't trust the system, basically.
They didn't trust the system.
I lived in the 17th on Broadway in Great Town.
Did it destroy it? All of it?
Oh yeah, everything was gone. You know.
Could y'all go back and rebuild?
No, my people they stayed and just my people just keep moving. Like, you know, when you're at the bottom, it's like you don't have no verse, you don't have nobody to complain to. So if it happened, keep moving. You know? And that's how my people, you know.
Wow. To live like that, it's not.
So how are you dealing with the trauma? They kind of talked about.
So
And you got another question back there too.
with the trauma, I forget. Like she remind me, like you feel me, like stuff like that, you can't harp on it. you know. And when I hear stories, I forget about all my trauma. Like it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, but it reminds me, you know, why I do what I do and how I move for the people.
Okay.
If I may, and just hearing him, all five of them, and just listening to them, came from a different walk of life, from little bitty New Orleans. Very different. And your question that you asked him, well, why didn't y'all all leave together? Or
Yeah.
it was an innocent question.
Yeah.
And his response, being a child,
Mhm.
he understands even at 20 something years old.
Right.
But it's different. His story was different from hers, from his, from hers. And I'm saying
There
socioeconomically,
you go.
resources, education, having somewhere to go, because I'm willing to bet, and I just met him today, and I hugged him already, and just reading what I saw on his website. They probably lived generations in the house, and they probably didn't have nowhere else to go because they all together.
That's what he
We
said.
are very clannish people.
He
And
said
we're
that his
not
grandma
with
couldn't
each other.
read.
Exactly.
What'd you say about your grandma?
Yeah, my grandma, my mom, like they didn't know how to read. My mom didn't learn how to read till she was like 27. My grandma to this day don't even know how to drive or read or write, you know? All we had was each other, you feel me?
So he couldn't, my people could, because we were already here in Dallas.
Right.
So my people could say, Dana, I'm coming to you. He didn't have that, they didn't have that option. And how he got separated like that,
Yeah.
and to hear her story, I've never heard those stories, right? We hear stories from people. Anytime we meet people from New Orleans, first, we want to know where you went to school, who your people, where you're from, and, or you can come to my house. I told him this.
Right.
Yes.
Ends up knowing one
Yes.
of my son's high school friends, just
Yes.
because we talk
Yes.
to each other.
Yes.
We're so family oriented.
Right.
And I told him, you are welcome to come to my house now, right? So I'm saying that to say, we're not gonna leave each other. And just like she said, she turned down an opportunity for shelter because she wasn't gonna leave her husband. And I was not born during Betsy, but if I remember the stories correctly, they did the same thing, separated husbands and wives, right? So depending on what your resources were, really determined what happened during that time. And I'm so proud of him. I said it to him already, that he made it out.
That's right. That's right.
Even he said he's been suppressing those memories
Did you have to do?
because
Did you have therapy? Did you get some help?
Oh no, I ain't had no therapy.
Wow.
Now working on
But
that.
that's not
Oh,
a
we working on that.
Okay, so yeah.
So
Definitely
yeah.
working on that.
All right, so we're gonna go with his question, and then I think you got a question in the back.
There you go.
It's not so much that I have a question, but a statement. The lady sitting to the right of my wife brought back memories for me. I was teaching school in Dallas, and where we were in Dallas, all of the children that were brought from Katrina were either at, depending on how old they were, elementary school, Joseph J. Rose, or the middle school where my wife was. And so
We can't reach that.
I got this kid. He came to school late, but he had been in New Orleans during Katrina. So I kept trying to encourage him to participate. Uh, I gave him, trying to give him resources, books and whatnot. So he just put his head down. And so the third time I approached him, he got up and he slung his desk across the room. And he told me I was in Katrina. I was in the Superdome. I killed people. So then I took him to my room. He told me the story. And what the lady was saying was so much like the story that the kid told me. He said that we woke up and there was water on the floor. He said his older brothers went out and they found boats. And they put the family in the boats. He said everywhere that they went, so you can't come here, you can't come here. So finally they ended up in the Superdome. So by this time I sent for his mother and I realized that what he told me was the truth because his mother told me the exact same story. So I was sitting here listening to your story, and it just brought tears to my eyes. And we still wonder today what happened to that family. His mother told me, before I would experience something like that again, mister, I would rather die. That's how compelling her story, their truth was. So even though I wasn't there, hearing stories like that, uh, people that went through those things, and again, I had to make my wife, she couldn't even be in the room because of the things that we were watching happening in New Orleans.
Yeah.
I'm crying. The big thing is the mental health problems that the nation suffers from, not just New Orleans.
Teach, bro.
Every major urban enclave
Yep.
in America, people are suffering from mental health challenges.
Real talk.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, any other questions while we close out this panel? Dr.?
Our hearts are going.
On the flip side, I just want to make a comment. During Katrina, I was on the flip side. So I was actually doing intake when the buses came in. And the trauma and some people didn't even know where their families ended up at. They couldn't, the pain and the hurt, like there was no center of connection. We tried to do that, but systems were not talking then. And so it was like, I'm looking for such and such, I can't find such and such. And it was, and these buses, they just kept coming in, young people looking for their parents. And I couldn't fathom, like, how did this separation just happen? And hearing you guys' story, especially, I can't, one of our, because she's been with us forever. Yeah, just, and now I get a sense of how that was happening in a lack of resources and then the lack of medical attention because it was just crazy. Like we literally had people that were coming in, you know, just from fights too at the same time. They were coming in fights. So you know, bullet wounds, stab. I couldn't even understand Phantom what the heck is going on. You know, what's real, what's unreal. It was just craziness just doing the intake process and trying to connect families and their experience. I mean, and we were trying to get resources in the Fort Worth area to try to, you know, help the amount of families that were coming in by the bus loads and having enough beds in place for the amount of families that was coming in by bus loads.
Thank you for that.
I tried to
Thank
get
you for that.
I think my restaurant went broke because of
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
this has been
Yeah.
so emotional, so informational,
I
so
don't think I can hit that down.
I know it's heavy, but it's real though. And we have to figure out, you know, I know it's 20 years later, but still the ramifications of it
Yes.
is still there. I asked Pastor Tatum to kind of close this panel in prayer. Oh, but first we got to hear from Dr. Lisa. I was saving you for last because you kind of sum up everything. So after Dr. Lisa,
You'll have prayer.
I'm gonna have Pastor Tatum pray. And also you may want to go ahead and give them your information on how they contact you and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So as we said earlier, thank you all, those of you in Fort Worth, those of you in other places and who are hearing this on the media. We do appreciate you, and especially those of you who respected our culture as we came and continue to respect our culture. We appreciate that. That's very important. One of the things that I'd like to leave with us as we close, when you heard the stories about they left us to die, and you heard the story about separating families. And remember, I used the word earlier, the plantocracy. Much of that happened, one, because they didn't care anything. Some people didn't care about us, especially Black and poor, and others who are poor. That's one thing. The second thing is, and I share this with my children and my children who are my students and so on and so on. When you are a threat to people, then Yeah, they want to lose you back. See, because they don't understand how we could come from a city where we talk funny, where resources were not necessarily available all the time. And yet, even those of us who don't necessarily have the highest degree that, the world recognizes, we have contributed not just to New Orleans, not just to Louisiana, not just to the United States, but to the whole world long before Katrina came. And we came from some of those broken schools. And we came from places where our grandmothers didn't know how to read, but they knew how to work. They knew how to love. They knew how to cook. They knew how to sew. The men knew how to work, and they're not lazy. They have just decided that they're not going to work for you because I'm my own man and I know how to get my own stuff and take care of my own family. And so, if that's not a threat to you, then you will rescue the people. Then you will see them as human. Then you won't feel some kind of way when they are able to take care of their children and buy a house. You won't. You won't feel some kind of way when you see that they are still here. You won't feel some kind of way when you hear a woman say out of her own mouth that she was triggered when she went back home from living in Texas back to New Orleans because she saw how the disaster capitalists came and did some things, some meaning well, others, they were disaster capitalists who saw us down and they decided, oh, we're going to take it, then wanting to take it. When you think about where we are now, and those of us who made it, and we will continue to make it, what I've learned too is when we talk about education, children are children wherever you go. They will trust, they want to be taught, they will love, and they know your heart when you come in front of them or on the side of them or even around them. If you teach them like you're teaching your own children or your own grandchildren, they'll learn it. The other thing that I've learned from Katrina is too that, and I guess I already knew this, but it becomes more prevalent. Women, we've talked about our men. We got the power. Not that the men don't, but God has given us something that men can't, nobody can replicate that. So as we get well, as we heal, as we acknowledge our pain, the scars that we have, and I talk about that in my first book, when we recognize that and we seek help in the therapy, then our communities will be better because our households will be better because the mother who is responsible for loving, for nurturing, can do that from a healed perspective.
That's good.
I'm not a doctor of psychology, but I'm a doctor of life. And God has taught me some things and is teaching me some things. And what I want to continue to remind us is that was then, yes, it is still now. And like I started out earlier, never forget, look back to live forward.
Okay, let's give this panel a hand. Thank you all so much for just sharing, for opening your heart. We appreciate you, and we will continue to pray for you. Pastor Ted, do you come in and just kind of stand behind them, and 'cause I want to make sure you're on camera. If you can stand behind and just pray. We need prayer after all of this. We'll be here.
First of all, I want to thank the Doc Bookshop and
Thank you. Yeah.
these incredible panelists for really just opening up your heart with what you've gone through. Some people have closed their hearts up and they've hardened to protect themselves. But we as a people, we heal through our stories. And you may not know it, the Bible says, through our testimonies, the saints are saved. And I just want to thank you all. I listened. I remember Katrina, but I didn't live Katrina. Amen. I felt you hurt, but I didn't live your hurt. And like Zana, we were trying to help on this end. But what you all experienced, my Lord, your son, I'd like to meet him. He is a hero. In spite of everything, he's a hero. And I want to tell you all are our heroes for telling your stories. Mother, you mentioned mothers and fathers, and this is what I believe. God has given women the unbelievable power of influence to influence the world for right or for wrong. What you do with it, that he will judge you on. I believe he gave men the power of leadership in how we lead our families, how we lead our communities. He's going to hold us accountable. But I do believe that voice of the woman is how the man gets his guidance. And when we listen to our women, the entire family will get better. Amen.
Amen.
Eternal God, our Father, thank you for this moment as we remember August 1619, when our ancestors first landed on these soils. They were too traumatized. They left their homeland. They didn't know the language. They were traumatized. We are a people who have been greatly traumatized. But in spite of the trauma, we have shown the world that we are a resilient people. So thank you for these individuals here who, in spite of what they've gone through, they are here to testify that they not just are survivors, but they can thrive and show us how to be resilient through our own trauma. Lord, help us as we leave this place. Build a clear circle of compassion so that when we hear the stories, we not only empathize and sympathize, we offer support to help them to get better. This is our prayer. In Christ's name we do pray. Amen.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Pastor Tatum. Okay, we're gonna take a break, breather. Meet and greet our authors that are here. And in about let's say 10 minutes. 10 minutes, we're gonna bring the authors up and introduce our authors. So please meet and greet our authors and as we transition to the next segment. We're gonna introduce the authors and we have Dr. Jason that'll be here in a minute, talk about that church, and then we'll have our meet and greet with Canadian College.
Look, he said, baby. Oops, I don't want that. I didn't know your reason there. For me. Oh. Y'all, that's not, you just don't know. For real. Thank you, thank you. So wait. All the. All oh, so y'all the ones basically terrified. So wait, they're yeah. So what they were what is it? Yes. That's where I'm like. Well, I'm not going to see it on the camera. Yeah, because they be on the other side. But yeah, oh, hey, oh, hey, oh, hey. Somebody was saying something about doing something or something. He was like, oh, they got technical. Oh, like, we like y'all want. Oh, no, there we go. There we go. We go. And we go. You know, and then, oh, no.